Welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. Now, in the session I covered previously, I started this whole conversation about how we have an energy expenditure requirement with respect to our bodies. One of those expenditures will be related to our immune system, and therefore we have an immunological requirement for energy. At rest, our immune system doesn't use as much energy. When our immune system is under attack, or when we feel as there's something foreign in the body, our immune system is mobilized, and that mobilization process and the continuation of the protective requirement of our immune system necessitates a huge consumption of energy. If we consume too much energy relative to what we have created, we're in a deficit position, and therefore we find we have no energy. That process leads us to feel fatigued, to feel as though we are inadequate in our abilities, and sometimes leads to a point where we start to feel concerned about whether we have issues. It goes into our mind, psychology. It can lead to depression. In today's session, therefore, I want to talk about chronic infection, because by virtue of how I concluded the prior session, allergy and autoimmunity, I think chronic infection is something that must be considered. If you find that you are constantly fatigued, but also you're constantly anxious about yourself, particularly your body, and you find yourself in a state that you might consider to be depression, there's a possibility that there is a chronic infection that exists. You may be aware of this, you may not be aware of this, but I'll share my opinions nonetheless, and take like a buffet, take what you want out of this conversation, because some of it may not be applicable to most people, and it only may be applicable to a small percentage of people. Let's start as follows. Our bodies act as a lovely castle for microbes and foreign invaders. Our bodies are seen the same way the our early forefathers and our early ancestry lines may have been in castles, and there was a moat, and in there we had everyone, and it was a city that thrived and people were happy. We had protective barriers, but every now and then you have foreign invaders who want to be in that same place as we are. They want to come, they want to kill, they want to steal, they want to loot, they want to destroy, and they want to habitate and procreate. Our bodies therefore serve as free lunches and a nesting place for microbes. You see, we are, by nature, expected to have more risks relating to foreign invasion as we age. The body keeps the score. And therefore, as you age, you have to pay more attention to your immunological needs, because it's most likely going to be much higher than when you were younger. Every major pathology for Westerners, whether you talk about diabetes, whether you talk about dementia, cancer, coronary infections, diseases, conditions, every major pathology has an inflammatory, infectious component to it. It's very important because, and this is key, because what that also means, ipso facto, is if you understand immunology, your immune system and your immunological requirements, and if you understand chronic infection, and if you understand inflammation, then a lot of the sufferings that we have on the physical level, which leads to the sociological, physiological, psychological, mental level, can be reduced. If every pathology for Westerners, from diabetes to dementia to cancer and more, are connected to our infectious load and our immunological bucket, then it also means that all of the conditions are associated with inflammation and fatigue and depression. The converse is also true. Think about that carefully. Fatigue, depression, inflammation play a part, or manifested in your life by virtue of maybe a symptom, a causal issue in the body. People who have poor energy delivery mechanisms would, generally speaking, be more susceptible to chronic infections. And chronic infections generally often start with just an acute infection that isn't treated. Sometimes it might even start with just an inflammatory, something related to inflammation that isn't dealt with immediately. What this simply means is that improving our immune defenses so that we never get to the point where we're at a risk of being chronically infected is key. Now, in today's session, as I connect what I've said so far with what I think the theme really is, which is how are there strategies that help prevent the pro-inflammation in your body? And the answer is yes. We all know that the answer is yes. The way we live, the food we eat, our associations, our focus, and our choices play a part in our outcomes. For some reason, in the West, we have subscribed to this position which suggests that we as individuals are not responsible, that there is something out there, something in the ether that is controlling all of the various outcomes of our lives. Now, we cannot always change circumstances, but we can change ourselves. Which is why in the series I started with the body, and the purpose was, yeah, there are some psychological and mental issues that perhaps are beyond our ability to control. But there are things within the physical side, lifestyle, food, diets, which are within our ability to control. So with regards to strategies to prevent pro-inflammation, it's no different from what I've covered previously. The first is that you need to put your body and keep your body in a healthy state. Really is that simple. Now, there's a question about what is healthy, what isn't healthy. Is it subjective, is it objective? I'll say as follows. If you go back to the sections I covered previously, I made reference to the importance of diet and gut function and mitochondria. The fuel for mitochondria is a diet that is rich in fiber and fat, primarily fat, ketogenic. So we talk about the PK diet, which is the paleo-ketogenic diet. Dairy-free, is also free from any form of gluten, is rich in fat and fiber. It has a moderate quantity of carbohydrates and protein. And in that way, you're fueling your body through ketones, as opposed to fueling your body through glucose, which comes from sugars and carbohydrates and starches. If you do that, the body is being given the right food, and therefore you're putting the body and keeping the body in a healthy state. There are then nutritional supplements and minerals that you must take to enhance. But so the first step in terms of strategies is, you keep your body, put your body in a good state, in a healthy state. The second is actually just to reduce any form of pollutants that either switch on your immune system or causes your body to go into hyperallergic reaction. So pollutants are all over the place. There are things that we can do, and I will cover this in the session that follows, that we can do to minimize and reduce our exposure. You see, we all have a toxic load. I have one, you have one, the person next to you has one. We all have a toxic load. The question really is not so much whether we have a toxic load. The question is, what's the level of that toxicity? How high is your toxic load? And so what we are supposed to do, especially as we get older, which means we are more exposed to such a toxic environment, is to reduce rather than increase our toxic load. And there are several ways we go about this, but the key thing is to reduce any exposure to pollutants, anything that can switch on autoimmunity or allergy. For people who work in the city, or for people who actually even live in a village, there are different ways that this can happen. So the key thing is understanding, well, what does it mean to have pollutants? And I'll cover this in the session that follows. And how can we and how can I try as much as I can to minimize any risk that is increases over time. Now, the second is then to address, or the third round is then to identify and address any possible risk of chronic infection. All of what I have described is doable by all people. I will make reference to something that I do, which I think anybody can. It's very affordable, it's very cheap. Iodine and vitamin C, I have found, play a huge role in reducing our toxic load, but more importantly, reducing the levels of inflammation we have. Now, understand something. There are steps that must be followed. The first step is actually the fuel you're putting in your tank, which is your diet and your gut. If you stick to a carbohydrate rich and you fuel your body from carbohydrates and sugars and starches, and therefore you do not move into a much more long-standing and healthier option, then using iodine and vitamin C, though helpful, will not be as effective in the long term. So the first step is always diet and your gut function. The second is then the minerals and the vitamins that are necessary to allow the system to flow in terms of energy delivery. The third is then making sure that you reduce any form of exposure to anything that can switch on your immune system. And then we'll talk about chronic infection. Recognize that if you've gone through the first three steps, the possibility of chronic infection reduces. Now, vitamin C and iodine, I use, and this I thought perhaps would be a useful way of explaining how this works. We've heard a lot about iodine, and again, I'm speaking based on what I do, not making any recommendations, but I'll tell you what I've done for a while now and found it to be of some value. Iodine contact kills all microbes. It's a highly effective way of ensuring that you have something that can be used because it's absorbed by the body easily. Whether you have any infections physically in terms of skin, or whether you have any toxic load internally. The Lugos iodine is the one I use, which is what this is, 15% solution. And with iodine, you can have your iodine in water, so you can drink iodine water, 2 drops of iodine, and perhaps a liter of water, and you drink it throughout the whole day. You don't drink it at the same time as you do vitamin C, I should say that. And you could also, mix iodine with oil, so you have iodine oil. A ratio that works in 10 to 1, so 10 parts oil to 1 part iodine. Or you can inhale it using a salt pipe. Now I have actually even brought my salt pipe so you can see what this looks like. Let me demonstrate. 2 drops of, sometimes even 1 drop of iodine into the salt pipe. Shake it, you can see it's just a standard salt pipe. And inhale, inhale. You do this about 20 times until the iodine kind of is smelt in the salt pipe. Very effective. Helps deal with any cardiovascular issues. Flushes your system. Remember, it's very volatile. So it contact kills microbes, fungi issues, bacteria, anything. Sometimes I just do this throughout the whole day. It's very effortless if you think about it. Iodine. Vitamin C, on the other hand, is another compound. Very useful. You take it, about 5 grams of vitamin C, which is what I take every day because I am already on a PK diet. And my gut function, by virtue of my diet, is at a certain state. And therefore my infectious load is much lower. Now I found over the past few weeks, especially during the festive season, traveling, meeting family and friends, interacting with loved ones, hosting, being hosted, we're mixing with people, and therefore my immune system was under attack. And I found, just by taking vitamin C and iodine, I was able to reduce my infectious load. Normally I take 5 grams of vitamin C every day. mix it with water, and there it goes. And I found actually my infectious load increased because I came across a lot of people who were very ill, coughing, sneezing, had the flu, but my infectious load was much higher. And the whole idea of vitamin C is that you take vitamin C to bowel tolerance. You take it until you get to bowel tolerance. And I found over the past 3-4 days, I have been taking about 30 grams of vitamin C throughout the whole day at hourly intervals. Every hour I take another 5 to 10 grams. I could not get to bowel tolerance. And I've continued that even up until today. And I am still not at bowel tolerance. And here is the important question. Prior to the holiday seasons, when I was not interacting with the world as much as I have done in the past few weeks, 10 grams of vitamin C would get me to bowel tolerance because my infectious load is very low. In the past 3 to 4 days, despite my taking 30 to 40 grams of vitamin C every day, I have not reached bowel tolerance. And the reason for that is because my infectious load is very high. At this time of the year, at this time of the season, we pick up infections. Those infections we pick up actually lead to inflammation. The inflammatory state of our bodies can cause any form of, you might even say, autoimmune, allergic, you might say, issue that spins out of control if we're not careful. Because what we tend to do is that taking prescription drugs, sometimes taking social drugs, sometimes taking vaccinations, or taking things that then ensure that the experience we are going through is magnified. So I'm going to end today's session with vitamin C and iodine by saying it's worth looking into. For some reason, there is this bad rap that we have around iodine. I don't understand it. You know, I love it. Vitamin C, I love it. And it's so useful. If for those of you who have never been on farms or who've been out, you get bitten by a wasp or a bee, you drop iodine, the issue goes out immediately. You know, no issue about swelling or irritations. If you have skin allergies of skin, eczema, you know, you mix it with coconut oil to get iodine oil, then you just rub it, and it deals with all of the issues. Again, it contact kills. But the most important things, these two things are important with regards to what happens to your gut. Vitamin C helps ensure your gut stays in a lovely state because it goes into your gut and actually kills all microbes that are not good microbes in your gut. Anyway, I'll end today's session with what I have shared so far. And in the session that follows, I'll probably expand a little bit more about what I have covered in today's session.